The last two segments, the first one being how to manage the spatial data and working with some geoprocessing tools, and then the last one would be working on map layouts. So when it comes to spatial data management and working with geoprocessing tools is something which is not really new. You have been working on it, and I have been mentioning about it, that invariably, whether we know or not, we are actually using it because most of the functionalities, the modules in ArcGIS Pro have been laid in terms of one or the other geoprocessing tool, right? So like we did XY2 point, that was also a geoprocessing tool. We copied data from here to there, that is also a geoprocessing tool. Okay, we exported data, that's a geoprocessing tool. We made a selection from one layer and then made it another layer from the selection, that's also a part of a tool, right? So we have been using invariably unknowingly, but we will try to do it more specifically and maybe emphasizing on it types, and let's see how it goes. So how do we modify the information from an attribute table, or how do we obtain the geometric information? Maybe now that we have had some coverage in the classes, let's see. If I raise this to Venkatesh. Venkatesh, can you hear me? Venkatesh?
Hello, sir.
Can you hear me, Venkatesh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So just wanted to ask you, from the first 2 points that you see on the class 7, which is spatial data management and geoprocessing tools, the first two, the modifying of information from an attribute table and obtaining geometric information, what do you actually understand from this?
Sir, sorry, I can't hear you. Hello.
The first 2 points that you see here, the point number 1, this one, and the point number 2, this one. Can you derive some sense from this?
Modify information from attribute table in the sense attribute table, how to say, yesterday itself we opened some of the attribute table for the point
Yes,
line polygon.
one I have opened now.
Yes, sir.
So what do you understand by modifying it, and where would you put that thing to use in terms of a project, or more, maybe in learning, or maybe in teaching? Where do you see you would use this?
How to say, while if a person who is taking survey, if he enter the value by mistake, in that time we can modify that. Correct, sir?
So that modification is like, maybe I'll try to do something on the go, right? So I have clicked on add a new link. Okay. So I'm trying to add a new field, and it says trial. Okay.
Okay.
And no alias and no nothing. And what I want is, I want a text in it. And this also needs to be a numeric, simple figure, nothing more, right? So I have used this, created this text thing. Did I save it? It asked for save, na?
That edit and
Did I not save that or what? I guess I did not save it, but not a problem. So forget about adding a new one. This is something that is there, okay? A particular value in point underscore y. So I copy it, right? I copy it and then I paste it in a notepad for me to use it again in case I miss. Okay, so this is here, and the point that you raised, or maybe the reason that you gave, or an example for use, you said maybe the people who have created the map have entered it incorrectly, like this, and now that they have identified that this is an error that they have made, they wish to correct it, right? Is this something
Yes,
that
sir.
you wanted to say? Okay, so this is one. So this is one. Okay, not a problem. And what else?
Uh, what else?
Anyone else who would like to attempt? Maybe raise your hand so that I can come to you and ask. Right. So Venkatesh raised the, gave a scenario to us which says if someone has entered a data erroneously, incorrectly, so maybe they can go ahead, click on the modified table, attribute table, and then double click on a particular element and then modify it. So that is, yes, one good way and one valid reason. Okay, but others can be, like for example, we did the joins. You remember yesterday when we did the spatial and a non-spatial join, and what happened was somehow some unwanted data also came in, like multiple blank columns, okay, because of a blank row on, over the column header. So the system could not understand which columns to pick and which to drop. So it picked up all. So 256 columns in total, and we did not need it. So what we could have done was we could have maybe gone ahead here, selected it, did a right click, or maybe not even a right click, selected this, and maybe use this little delete option. Because this is system generated stuff, we cannot delete this because this is required by the system to display where on earth this point should be. But had it been an extra field, we could have gone ahead, and maybe if you see, if I have this, okay, so I go in this, right, I can hide this, or maybe I can select and delete this, right? See this delete option, when it is highlighted, then you can delete a particular field. So these are required when during the project you realize, or you come to know, or you are made aware of a problem that's there and you want to get rid of it. Okay, so I'm saving the last edit that I did for me to be able to come back, because one particular layer was in edit session. Okay, uh, to bring you to a basic point, bring you back rather, but it could be an important one. In ArcGIS Pro, a difference from ArcMap is like in each row or each layer that you create or you add is by default in edit mode, wherein in ArcMap you had to create an edit session. You have to initialize an edit session. Okay. Start editing. You do not have to do that in ArcGIS Pro. ArcGIS Pro, any layer that you add here is automatically in edit mode. So one step reduced from ArcMap days, but then technically why it was that way in ArcMap, because no one ever, while working on a complex project which has like hundreds and hundreds of layers, maybe thousands of layers, and no one by mistake starts editing on one layer, has a work in between, leaves the system, comes back to it, forgets as to which layer he was working on, and starts editing another layer. Right. So in such a scenario, what would the system save to database. Which one? The first one or the second one? To avoid such a conflict. You know database locks. I'll try to invoke Digo. FLC, if you can hear me, and I would appreciate if you could come to us in terms of uh, whether you understand a phenomena which is called database lock. You have raised hand, so I'm trying to involve you. If you have any problems, can you let me know as to what's your concern here? Can you hear me? One, if you can hear me, I'm unmuting you so that you can try and participate in this little quiz of sorts. Or maybe if you have some audio related problems, or if you have noise in the background or whatever, maybe you can type, you can use the chat option, and then you can type in so that I can see, maybe I can share it with others also. But I would appreciate if you could come to me. You can hear it though. So what I need you to see is to let me know what do you know about a database lock. Why I'm saying this, I'll bring you back to a point very quickly if I get this from you. Are you aware of a database lock phenomena, DB lock? So maybe by the time he writes, let's continue. So you saw that while I was working on point 2 and I had edited one by double clicking and changing the value, I came to this tree thing, the tree layer, and I wanted to delete this tree type, but I could not because this was uneditable, right? It was uneditable and it was grayed out. Yes, Venki?
So that database log is used to maintain the data consistency. Otherwise, all data we can easily modify, or anyone who is open our system can modify. If we use the database log, then the consistency of the data
You
will
have,
not.
you have noise in the background, Venki.
So now can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can hear the background noise
Now,
too,
sir,
and
now it
that's
is okay.
okay. Yes, this is perfect now. So you were saying something about DB lock.
Sir, that you asked about database lock.
Yes.
The database the use of lock in database is to
Mm-hmm.
maintain the consistency of the data. Otherwise, if we forgot to shut down our system, suddenly while you are working in ArcGIS and we are going out, that time if any people come and open our system, and if they modified it, then it is very difficult for us to retain the original one. For that purpose, we
Exactly.
can use the database lock for consistency
Good
of
one.
data.
Good one. So that is point number one. Yes, to maintain, and a very valid one, to maintain the data consistency, the consistency of the data across the database, right? So that is the very reason that while we were working on the points two layer, and I edited one, right? The system logged this layer logged this layer in the sense of a DB lock, right? And now that I jump back to the layer tree and I wanted to delete this field, right, which again is a database operation, the system did not allow me that. No, it grayed out because what it says is, or what it hints to, or what it points out to is that I have already a layer in the edit mode. I'm working on it. Let that exercise finish for the system to be able to save that information, the updated information, back to the database table, and then come back to me asking in for more commands, right? So I did that. I saved the edits. Now I'm here in the tree thing, and I can delete the tree type. So that's one, but it's an important one, and these are some of the attributes or some of the phenomena which people who do not have a tech background or an engineering background or maybe an IT background, they do not really understand the complexity of this or maybe the necessity of this. And if they happen to overlook, then there can be an inconsistent data in hand. To avoid such situation, the system automatically puts in a log and it doesn't allow you to do anything else until and unless you finish the first thing in hand. Okay, so that was the point that I wanted to come back to. So this thing, and we also know that we have to discuss about modifying information, and we were trying to take inputs from the participants as to why exactly would a modification be required. So Venki is more than helpful and has been much supportive. He has given us some very valid ones, right? So that is there. But apart from this, and in addition to what we did yesterday, right, which was adding some non-spatial attributes into a spatial domain, into a spatial data set, that's also there. That is also a part of a modification of the attribute table, right? We had an attribute table set, we created a layer, we saved it. So a saved layer meaning a persisted database table, the values into the table and complete, right? So we inputted that, we added that layer, and then we added another standalone table, and then we did a join, and then we introduced some new inputs into it. So that is also a modification. That can be one of the reasons why modification is required. But another reason can be, like I worked on some data, so I did a primitive mapping, and a primitive mapping is like, for example, if I come back to this table and I zoom, so maybe if this is the tree thing, let me come to the symbology of this. So while I'm in the symbology of the tree layer, and if I use something different, right? If I use this, okay, so I see this thing, okay, which is the tree layer, and I have some trees. Maybe these are not trees actually. Maybe while in a class we would have worked on a particular point layer, and we would have simply randomly laid down some points, mark some points, but maybe there can be trees also. So these are trees actually. No? In the middle of the road, these are trees. Okay. So if I have to add this and I have to put in some information, while I'm not doing that exercise because we already did that yesterday. Say for example, if I had to fill in this tree underscore type attribute, and I know that this is one type of a tree, this is a type 2, this is type 3, this is type 4, maybe this is in terms of height, in terms of shades, in terms of leaves, in terms of fruits, there can be different species. So any information can come to us in an Excel sheet, and then if I have to join that, right? So this is the point layer, and if I have an attribute also, like maybe instead of doing a join, I'll simply use my keyboard and then do a type 1 or a type 2 and a type 3, whatever, right? To give you an example, okay, so this is this, and the system suggests that it has an object ID and a shape type, which is a point type layer, right? And I have through my manual effort or through a join effort, whatever, I have the info about the tree types, right? But do I have the attributes which are required for me to use this information elsewhere, or maybe to give it to some other person and ask them to modify certain values, like the value we change in this points to. I modify the point underscore y thing. Can I ask someone to do that for me? No, I cannot, because that column is not there, that value is not there. So how would someone go ahead and modify it when it's not there? For you to be able to modify something, you have to get that thing in hand, and then only you can modify. So how do we do that? That's another type of modification, right? And that modification can be called obtaining geometric information, right? So I know for sure that this attribute here, this little tree here, which I'm trying to identify now, the object ID 7 and tree type null, would have a lot more than that, would have a lot more information than these two attributes, the object ID and the tree type. It has, because you see, there is a spatial information about this also. There is a latitude and a longitude. There is this 74.40 degree west and a 39.38 degrees north. So it has a spatial attribute to it, right? And if I click on this, or maybe to give you another view, I have already selected that, so maybe you do not get to see. If I'm here, right, I've selected a point and I'm not sure where, right? So if I come back to this, or maybe if I zoom to this, so I am presented by the software a particular point on the kind of screen full, or maybe the maximum zoom possible, right? So how does the system pick this information? And if I copy the attributes which are here, which is displayed here, you take a look at this area. So if I do a mouse over, right, there is a certain set of a west and a north displayed down. So how does this attribute come? Maybe you would ask that there is this world imagery. I'll remove that also. I've removed that. Right. So there is no base map. All that you have are different point layers, right? This point layer, this line layer, road, this vacant plot, this tree thing, right? So I have all these trees, and one of them is highlighted because I have highlighted it from here. And when I zoom to this area, I still get to see some spatial information. So how do I get that? Because that's there in the system, but you cannot see that. Why you cannot see that? Because it's not made visible by the software, and because we were doing it in a hurry, and we haven't captured the attributes, and we didn't really want to do that, capturing those attributes, because we were in the middle of the class and we were trying to tell the participants as to how can you go about creating a point layer. So we do not have to worry about showing them or maybe making them aware as to how to capture those data sets, because the system would do that for us and it would stay there. What if I save this layer and I open it in another GIS software, maybe in QGIS? What will happen? It will still be there because the system has the information and it would embed that information in the layer itself. But we do not get to see it in the attributes, so I cannot have, if I have created this layer, I cannot ask someone else to modify it for me by going ahead and making a change in the attribute one or the other, whatever. You cannot do that because it's not there. So that's another type of modification, and an important one. So we obtain a geometric information in this, and how you do that is like you come to this, right, and you simply use this calculate thing, it would ask for, again, this is a calculation and being done from one type, from the attribute table, but it's a geoprocessing tool again. So if I do this from here, so it would ask me for the parameters. It would say which field name and what kind of an attribute I want to calculate, right? But if I have this particular layer selected and I do a calculate geometry, then another geoprocessing tool comes in. And do take notes of these, because these would be helpful. Maybe you may miss out on the names of these tools, but you can maybe this has already been discussed in the class. If you feel that you have forgotten, you can try to give some keywords. Okay. So if I give the keywords calculate geometry attributes, the specific or related geoprocessing tools would come to you, right? Create geometry, repair geometry, calculate bridge offsets, calculate metrics, calculate geometry attributes, whatever, right? So I'm not doing it that way. I'm coming here and I'm saying calculate geometry. So it directly leads me to that geoprocessing tool which says calculate the geometry attributes of those layers. So in the tree type, maybe I'm distorting it to an extent, but what I want to do is I want to work on this feature, this tree feature, right? And I want to target the field tree type, and what I want to input there is like an x coordinate of this thing, this point, or the set of points, all these 10 points that we have. I can calculate the x coordinate, the y coordinate, because it's a point type, hence you would be offered these two only. Had it been a polygon or a line, you would have got more options in terms of the geometrical properties, right? So I have asked the software to fill in this column called tree type with the point x attribute, or the x coordinate, which is the easting thing, easting northing thing, right? And whatever be the coordinate system for this, if I want to keep it, I can directly go ahead and hit the run. But if I want to change it, right, if I want to change it, maybe I can see if I have some other options available. What's this? These are all web bucketed. So I can try and change something. This is the source wherein it was created. Maybe you can change these, right? You can change these. If I say 4326, which is the WGS84, let's see how it does. Right. So I have changed it to WGS84, and if I hit the run, what would it do? It would update the entire column with the GCS value of the x coordinate. Right. So this is the x. Had I had the layer, the column like x and y marked here, I could have calculated the point x in x and the point y in y. The coordinate x in column x and the coordinate y in column y. So I could do that, right? So now this thing and this thing, you see, these are the same. These are the same stuff. Let's try and find out. So I have queried for one particular thing, which is the object ID number 9. Let me come to the object ID number 9 first. So this is the object ID number 9, right? And this is the object here. So if I click on this, I get to see this is 74.40920, whatever. And in the table also, it is 74.4092. So this is the same. It was there, always it was there, but the system did not show it because we did not ask it to. And now we have learned it to do it automatically by asking the system to work for us and modify this. I have another query. Let's take the questions. Venkatesh, how to add column in existing attribute? Okay, we did not do that earlier. Not a problem. So this is the layer that we are working in, and we have to add another thing. Let's save this for now. Save the edits. I've cleared the selections. You see this little add field? This is how you add the field. You add the new field in this table. So now that you have raised this, let's see. Y_chord. I'll give it a name, right? I'm not giving it anything in terms of alias, but I'll use the double. I'll use the numeric type, and I would say the significant values would be okay, not a problem. Let's try to leave it as is, and I'm saving this. So the moment I save, it applies the changes. I click this close thing, and in the tree I get the Y chord. So this is how you add a new field. Now that you have added, I'll also wish to do this. The calculate geometry tree, the Y_chord is the target field because I've opted for it, and I want to give it a right. Let's see what it is. No, not this one, not this one, not this one. I want to do this thing again. 4326, and the geographies that the target areas or the projects that you work, right? Maybe you can try and remember the WKIDs, the EPSG values. It's always helpful. Not does not require, you do not require to waste too much of a time in selecting this from the entire list. You know the WKID, you do a search here, it's highlighted, you make the selection, it changes here, and then you run it. Maybe you continue with your work. This time around we are computing the point Y coordinate, but we could be doing any other work. So why to waste 2 minutes of your time going through a list and then working on it, right? So I have done this. I have kept it simple. So this is 6 only, 3, no. Hence the coordinate values are not that extended or elaborate in terms of the decimal values, but the point is still the same. So if I happen to select any, zoom to it, see the attribute 74 point whatever, right? Y coordinate 39.38. Let's shift it this way, 39.381, right? So this is the same.